It is crucial when diagnosing the problems with society and culture in modernity to accurately identify said problems, because you can't solve problems until you accurately identify them. And one of the absolute main problems with our lives today, and over the past numerous thousands of years, frankly, since the invention of money, on both an individual and societal level, is how wealth has been distributed, or better said, misdistributed. Problems with environment, energy, race, class, education, banking, health, etc. all have economic causes. And this is the major broken aspect of how money, the product of our energy, is working on the global Earth school campus at this time. In medieval feudalism, the king, one bloodline, had 96% of all the money. Some landed gentry consisting of a few dozen families who were loyal to the most likely unhonorable queen or king's family had 3%. And then all the many thousands of people of the kingdom who were dirt poor had the final 1%. And believe it or not, little has actually changed since then in terms of income distribution. If one were to ask Homo normalis what they think the curve of income distribution throughout parts of the planet which use money and have adopted commerce is, they would likely suspect it looks like either a straight line or at some 45-degree such angle from poor to middle class to rich. Or maybe if one were more knowledgeable in economics, they would realize that the curve is now starting to get much more steep than 45 degrees. Well, none of these are true. The curve is actually a backwards shaped L, folks, with it going nearly completely horizontal all the way across and then spiking vertical when hitting the top 99 percentile. The world's income distribution is not a bell curve, it is an L curve. Never heard of this before? Well, that's not surprising, as this would never be revealed on stock market publications or any sort of corporate media, but instead an off-the-beaten-path website called lcurve.org, which takes data from the U.S. Census Bureau, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Economic Policy Institute and translates it brilliantly into a very basic graphical representation which is easy to digest. It's important to note that data sources are lacking in the top 1% since we have a society that works best for the morbidly ultra-rich minority by the morbidly ultra-rich minority who pay legions of Saul Goodman-type accountants and lawyers to hide their money in offshore accounts. This is what the Panama Papers helped expose. As long as we've visited this L-curve site, and it's been for over a decade now, it's looked like one of those very basic early 2000 era websites. Very plain and mainly just text-based. At the top, it shows a very basic simple graphic of a stack of $100 bills, which looks like a gray brick in an ultra-simplistic computer graphic representation on a green ground between two stick-figure people. The stack represents the average U.S. household income across the population. There is a slider at the bottom of the graphic, which then, when adjusted, zooms the camera out to reveal that the stick figures are at the 50-yard line of a U.S. football field. As one continues to zoom out, we see the football field get smaller, and then hills and mountains, followed by open sky, and then what looks like the beginnings of space. With a single horizontal line going across the entire field, and then when hitting the end zone, spiking completely vertical. On the scale of the football field graph, the bottom 99.9% of the population measure their incomes as stacks of $100 bills in inches, while the top 0.01% measure their incomes as stacks of $100 bills miles high. The millions of Americans who make over $30,000 per year are in the top 1% of the planet's wealth, sure, but within that class is only the beginning of the horizontal line of the L-curve. On the vertical line of the curve is the total wealth of the tiny amount of people in the vertical spike, which nearly equals the total wealth of the rest of the population combined, and then there are now 6 families who have half the wealth on the planet. Of course, there are great rich folks out there doing some good in the world. We're not talking about those who have a few million bucks. Even though over 50% of Americans cannot afford an unexpected $3,000 medical bill, and Europeans that may be listening to this are wondering, what's a medical bill? If you've got a few million and are somehow using it to help others in your community, then jolly good. But it should be noted that even most of these rich people are also getting screwed in the same bucket with the middle class and the poor. For the vertical L-curve spike shouldn't even be classified as rich. It should be classified as parasitic against 99.9% of working class folks, which is you, me, and everyone we know, and they have zero idea of how staggeringly much money $1 billion is. It's 1,000 times larger than $1 million, and there are currently single individuals whose net worth is topping over $250 billion, and that's going up and up. The published wealth of billionaires, who should actually be called godzillionaires, of course, is typically estimated by their holdings in their own companies. These estimates do not include their typically vast diversified investments. And it's true that there are differences among different kinds of income, but political and economic power derives from wealth, raising many questions about modern societal life, leading us to dare ask the incredibly powerful question of why. Why does the wealth, which we all help to produce, go so disproportionately to the few at the top? Why, in a prosperous economy, is there so much poverty while at the same time having a dynamic where one individual who owns dick rockets could almost single-handedly pay for every college education if he wanted to? Why has the lion's share of the growth in economic booms almost gone exclusively to those at the vertical spike, while commonly wages have stagnated? Many of these questions will be answered in future insights, but the L-curve highlights political questions around the concentration of wealth, producing concentration of power that is fundamentally incompatible with democracy and free and open society. For we can't continue to have a democracy without a prosperous and strong working class.